What happens when the school bully targets the wrong girl, one with a strength that could change everything? This is the story of Maya Williams, a quiet new student who becomes the focus of Bryce Carter, the most feared boy at Clearview High School in Houston, Texas. He sees her as weak, an easy target. What he doesn't know is that Maya carries a secret that will completely shift the balance. Maya stepped off the bus, clutching her backpack straps, staring at the large front entrance of Clearview High. The autumn air was cool, with the faint smell of fresh grass mixing with the warmth still left from summer. Around her, students walked in groups, laughing and talking. But Maya felt like an outsider. This wasn't new for her. Clearview was her fourth school in 3 years. Some kids switched schools because of family jobs. Maya moved because she needed yet another fresh start. She kept her eyes down as she walked through the crowd, hoping to disappear. A few students glanced at her, curious about the new girl, but she quickly looked away. Inside, the hallways buzzed with noise, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, teachers trying to control the rush before the bell. Maya held onto her schedule, already familiar with the routine. Find her locker, figure out where she'd sit at lunch, and most importantly, learn who to avoid. That's when she saw him. Bryce Carter. Tall, broad-shouldered, and confident in the way only the most popular boy in school could be. He leaned casually against the lockers, surrounded by other athletes in Letterman jackets. They laughed at every word he said, though some looked nervous, as if laughing was required. Maya recognized his type instantly. Star quarterback. Good looks. Rich family. A mix of charm and control that made people either admire him or fear him. She had seen kids like him before, the ones who thrived on power. Her plan was simple: stay out of his way. But fate had other plans. As she walked past, someone shoved her shoulder. Her books fell to the floor, scattering across the hallway. Laughter rippled from nearby students. She knelt down quickly, cheeks burning. Then came the voice she dreaded. "Well, what do we have here?" She froze. She didn't need to look up. It was Bryce. His tone was smooth but carried an edge, like a cat playing with its prey. Behind him, his friends chuckled. Slowly, Maya looked up. Bryce stood over her with folded arms and a smug grin. "I don't think I've seen you before," he said. "You new here?" Maya didn't reply. She gathered her books, stood, and tried to walk away. But Bryce wasn't finished. "Hey, where are your manners? I asked you a question." The hallway grew quieter as students turned to see if the new girl would dare ignore Bryce Carter. Maya knew this game. The safest move with guys like Bryce was always the same: don't engage. But Bryce didn't take well to being ignored. A sharp tug on her backpack pulled her slightly backward. Not enough to hurt, but enough to make his message clear: he wasn't letting this go. Maya stopped and slowly turned around. The hallway grew unusually quiet. Even students who hadn't been paying attention before were now watching. Her eyes locked with Bryce's, and for a split second, his confident look wavered. Was that curiosity? Maybe even surprise? "You shouldn't have done that," Maya said softly. Bryce raised an eyebrow, then let out a mocking laugh. "And why not?" he asked with a smirk. Maya didn't answer. She simply held his gaze, steady and unflinching. "You're kind of weird, you know that?" Bryce tilted his head. His friends snickered behind him. Maya turned back around and walked away. She didn't need to glance back to know one thing: Bryce Carter wasn't finished with her yet. And he had no idea what mistake he was making. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Maya kept to the back of her classes, speaking only when necessary, avoiding eye contact. At lunch, she chose a seat near the edge of the cafeteria where she could observe without being noticed. Bryce and his crew owned the lunchroom, as expected. They claimed the biggest table in the center, their voices loud, their laughter even louder. Every now and then, Maya could feel his eyes flick toward her, but he didn't come over, not yet. By the end of the day, she was relieved to finally leave. The Houston heat pressed down, making the pavement shimmer as she walked toward the bus stop. She reached for her phone, ready to disappear into her own world, when a familiar voice called out. "Hey, new girl." She turned. Bryce was there, hands shoved casually in his pockets, that same smug grin across his face. A few of his friends stood a few steps behind, waiting for the show. Maya sighed. What do you want? Bryce stepped forward slowly. You've got an attitude problem, you know that? She didn't respond. His grin widened. What, you think you're better than me? Maya let out a short laugh, not nervous, not scared, just amused. And that laugh threw him off more than anything else. I think, she said calmly, that you should walk away. For a split second, Bryce's grin slipped. He quickly covered it up and leaned closer, towering over her. Oh yeah, and why's that? Maya leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you have no idea who I am. Bryce chuckled, shaking his head. And who exactly are you? Maya didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back, lifted her phone, and pressed a single button. Suddenly, the roar of a powerful engine filled the air. A black Dodge Charger Hellcat pulled up to the curb, the kind of car that made everyone stop and stare. Its tinted window rolled down slowly. And there he was. Vin Diesel. Bryce's trademark smirk disappeared in an instant. Maya finally smiled, the first real smile she'd shown all day. Still think I'm weird? She asked calmly. Bryce didn't reply. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the one in control. His jaw tightened, his eyes shifting nervously between Maya and the unmistakable figure in the driver's seat. The air grew heavy, the playful arrogance in Bryce's posture stiffening into unease. Behind him, his friends glanced at each other, suddenly quiet, none daring to laugh anymore. Maya, on the other hand, took her time. She adjusted her backpack strap and exhaled slowly, as though this wasn't a big deal at all. As if she hadn't just turned the tables on the school's most feared bully. Vin Diesel sat in silence, one hand resting casually on the steering wheel, his gaze locked on Bryce. He didn't need to say anything. His presence alone carried the message. Bryce swallowed hard. Wait, no way, he muttered, almost like he was trying to convince himself this wasn't real. His cocky tone was gone, replaced with a shaky edge of doubt. He looked at Maya again, really looked at her, as if trying to piece together something he should have realized earlier. Maya leaned just enough for him to hear her words. Her voice was calm, steady, and direct. Still think I'm just some random girl? Bryce's throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Then Vin finally spoke. Get in, kid. His tone was calm but firm. It wasn't a request. Without hesitation, Maya walked past Bryce, past the stunned silence of the crowd that had gathered, and opened the passenger door. She climbed in. Vin shifted the car into gear. The Charger roared as it pulled away, leaving behind whispers, wide eyes, and one very shaken Bryce Carter. For a while, neither of them spoke. Houston's late afternoon sun streaked gold across the windshield as the city blurred past. Maya rested her hands on her knees, tapping her fingers lightly, finally letting out the breath she'd been holding all day. Vin kept his eyes on the road, his fingers drumming lightly on the steering wheel. Vin tapped the steering wheel in rhythm as they drove. You okay? He asked. Maya gave a small nod, then let out a short laugh. That was kind of dramatic, wasn't it? Vin smirked, his signature half-smile creeping in. I didn't mean for them to find out like that, Maya admitted, shaking her head as she looked out the window. Vin glanced at her. And what would have been better? Letting some punk like that push you around. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me, Maya said quietly. I was just waiting. Waiting for what? Vin raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. For the right moment. For a second, Vin was silent. Then he chuckled. You sound like me when I was your age. Maya smirked. That's a scary thought. Vin laughed out loud, shaking his head. Smartass. The rest of the ride passed in comfortable silence. The tension from earlier had melted away, replaced by the ease of their back and forth. But Maya knew one thing. Bryce Carter wasn't finished. Fear could fade fast, and when it did, it usually turned into anger. When they pulled into the driveway of their sleek modern home in a quiet Houston suburb, Maya unbuckled her seat belt but didn't move right away. Something else on your mind? Vin asked, studying her face. Maya hesitated before admitting, he's not done with me. Vin nodded slowly. No. But you're not done with him either. Her eyes met his. "You think I should fight back?" Vin leaned back, resting his arm on the steering wheel. "I think you need to be ready. Guys like him, they don't like losing." Maya pressed her lips together, thinking. Then she nodded. "Yeah, I know." The next morning, Maya expected whispers at school. What she didn't expect was just how many people were talking. As she walked the hallways, she felt the weight of 100 stares. Conversations dropped when she passed, replaced by murmurs spreading like wildfire. Some kids were curious, some amused, and some, like Bryce's friends, were openly hostile. She spotted them near the lockers, a tight circle of athletes trying to look tough. Bryce stood in the middle, arms crossed. When his eyes met hers, he didn't smirk. He just stared. Maya didn't flinch. She met his gaze for a second longer than necessary, then turned and walked to class. She could hear the whispers behind her, but she didn't care. If Bryce wanted to play the long game, she could play it too. By lunchtime, things had escalated. As Maya carried her tray toward an empty table, one of Bryce's friends, Ryan, a stocky linebacker with more muscles than brains, stuck out his foot. Maya stumbled, her tray clattering loudly, but she caught herself before falling. A few students turned their heads, eyes darting between her and the group of jocks now laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. Maya straightened her tray and kept walking, not giving Ryan or his friends the reaction they wanted. Her calmness only seemed to irritate them more. "What? No comeback, princess?" Ryan sneered. Maya exhaled sharply, barely hiding a smirk. "I didn't realize cavemen still existed." The students nearby erupted with a collective "oh." Ryan's grin faltered. From across the cafeteria, Bryce tilted his head, studying her like he was deciding his next move. Maya didn't wait for him to make one. She walked past, sat down at her table, and began eating as if nothing had happened. But inside, she knew better. Bryce Carter wasn't the type to let things go. By the time the final bell rang, Maya was already braced for trouble. Sure enough, when she reached her locker, it had been completely trashed. Her books were dumped onto the floor, and thick black marker covered the metal with crude scribbles. She sighed and leaned against the locker beside it. A small crowd had gathered, watching from a safe distance. No one was brave enough to step in, but everyone wanted to see how she would react. Maya crouched down, calmly picking up her books one by one and stacking them neatly. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. Across the hallway, she could feel Bryce's eyes on her. He was waiting for her to break, to lash out, to give him something he could use. But Maya gave him nothing. She simply stood, closed her locker, and walked away. And that silence, that control, seemed to unsettle Bryce more than any insult could have. That night, at home, Maya sat at the kitchen table, tapping her fingers on the wood. Vin Diesel leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her. "They trashed my locker today," she said flatly. Vin raised an eyebrow. "That's their big move." Maya smirked. "For now." Vin nodded slowly. "So what's yours?" She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I'm going to let him dig his own grave." Vin grinned. "Now that's my girl." Maya leaned back in her chair, feeling that familiar spark of control settle inside her. Bryce Carter thought he was running the game. But in truth, Maya had just begun. She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd seen guys like Bryce before, loud, arrogant, convinced the world would always bow to them. And she knew exactly how to break them. Bullies like Bryce always needed an audience. They fed on fear, on reactions, on the power they thought they controlled. But Maya knew the truth. Guys like him weren't invincible. They slipped up. And when they did, it was only a matter of time before the mask cracked. Maya was patient. She'd let him keep digging his own grave until there was no escape. The next morning, she walked into Clearview High as if nothing had happened. The whispers were still there, but they'd changed. Yesterday, students whispered about the new girl who left school in Vin Diesel's muscle car. Today, the talk was about Bryce trashing her locker. The school was split. Some thought it was funny. Others thought Bryce had gone too far. Maya could feel the shift. Once people started questioning the so-called king, his crown didn't shine as bright. As usual, Bryce leaned against the lockers, His crew gathered around him. They were laughing loudly, probably at someone else's expense. But when Maya walked past, their noise faltered. Bryce's eyes locked on her, waiting for a reaction, some sign that yesterday still stung. But Maya gave him nothing. She kept walking, calm and unbothered. That silence was louder than any comeback. She caught the slight twitch in Bryce's jaw as his smirk tightened. By lunchtime, the tension had grown thick. Bryce wasn't used to being ignored. He needed control, and Maya wasn't playing along. So he went bigger. When Maya stepped into the cafeteria, Bryce was already waiting at his table, that smug grin plastered across his face. His voice rang out loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Hey, Maya! You still crying about your little locker?" The cafeteria quieted, eyes darting toward her. Maya didn't flinch. She picked up her tray and walked to her usual spot without even glancing at him. But Bryce wasn't done. "Guess you can't handle it, huh? Maybe your big, bad daddy should come fight your battles for you." This time, more students turned. Some chuckled nervously, others leaned in, sensing a showdown. The cafeteria fell into uneasy silence. All eyes turned as Maya finally looked up at Bryce. "It's funny," she said evenly. "You keep bringing up my dad, but you're the one who nearly wet yourself when you saw him." The room went still. Bryce's face darkened. His friends shifted in their seats, caught between laughing and pretending nothing had been said. Maya didn't let the silence break her. She calmly took a bite of her food, her eyes locked on Bryce. She wanted him to feel it, the humiliation, the loss of control. Guys like him didn't know how to handle being the joke. Bryce clenched his jaw and forced a laugh, though it came out tight and uneasy. "You think you're tough, huh?" he shot back. "Walking around like you own the place just because some rich, famous dad picks you up in a flashy car? You think you're better than us?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "No," she said simply. "I just don't need to prove anything." That cut deeper than any insult. Bryce's whole life revolved around proving he was the strongest, the most untouchable. Maya didn't need to prove a thing. She already knew who she was. And that, more than anything, infuriated him. She caught it then, the subtle shift. His shoulders tightened. His hand curled into a fist before he forced it to relax. He wasn't finished. He was planning something worse. Maya could feel it, and she was ready. After school, she didn't rush. She walked slowly toward the parking lot, knowing he'd be there. And he was, leaning against his car, arms folded, his expression unreadable. No friends this time. This was personal. Maya stopped a few feet away, raising an eyebrow. "Let me guess," she said. "Another speech about how I don't belong here?" Bryce let out a sharp breath through his nose. "Nah," he muttered. "I just want to know one thing." Maya crossed her arms. "And what's that?" He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Why don't you fight back?" There was no mockery in his voice this time. No arrogance. Just real curiosity. Maya considered the question, then shrugged. "Because I don't need to." Bryce shook his head, scoffing. "That's not how it works. People like me push. And people like you either push back or get crushed." Maya stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Or maybe people like me wait. We let people like you keep pushing, keep making mistakes, keep showing everyone how weak you really are. And when you're standing in the middle of the mess you created, we don't have to do a thing. You've already destroyed yourself." For the first time, Bryce's mask slipped. She saw doubt flicker in his eyes. He smirked quickly to cover it. "You think you've got me figured out? You don't know a damn thing about me." Maya studied him calmly. "Maybe not. But I know you're scared." His body tensed instantly. "I'm not scared of you." Maya smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "Not of me," she said softly. "You're scared of being irrelevant. Of losing. Of waking up one day and realizing no one cares about you, unless you're tearing someone else down. That's what really terrifies you." Bryce clenched his jaw, his nostrils flaring. Maya could see the battle inside him, the urge to lash out, to take control, but he had nothing. No words, no moves. Because deep down, he knew she was right. Maya shook her head. "I don't need to fight you, Bryce. You're already fighting yourself." With that, she turned and walked away. For the first time since they'd crossed paths, Bryce had no comeback. That night, Maya sat at the kitchen table, idly swirling the ice in her glass. Vin Diesel leaned against the counter, watching her closely. "Something happened today?" he asked. "With Bryce," Maya replied, nodding. "I think I got in his head." Vin smirked. "Good." Maya sighed. "But that doesn't mean he's done." Vin pushed off the counter and sat across from her. "You want to be done?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You could end it right now," Vin said, leaning in slightly. "Call him out. Embarrass him in front of everyone. You've got more power than you realize." Maya was quiet for a long moment before shaking her head. "No. I want him to end it himself." Vin grinned. "Smart." Maya leaned back, stretching. "Yeah, but it's going to take patience." Vin chuckled. "Good thing you've got plenty of that." Maya smirked. "Yeah, I do." And she did. She knew it was only a matter of time before Bryce Carter destroyed himself. The signs were already there. He had pushed and pushed, waiting for her to snap. But instead, he was the one unraveling. She saw it in the way his eyes darted when she entered a room. The tension in his shoulders every time someone mentioned her name. The way his friends' laughter rang hollow now, less certain. He had always been the one with the power. The one in control. But now, he was losing his grip, and everyone could see it. 2 days later, the final blow landed. The school was buzzing before Maya even arrived. She stepped through the doors into hushed voices, stifled laughter, and groups of students whispering while stealing glances toward the lockers. Something big had happened, and she had a pretty good guess what it was. She pushed her way toward the crowd gathered near Bryce's locker. Students stood frozen, some snapping photos with their phones, others shaking their heads in disbelief. And there it was. Plastered across Bryce's locker were printed screenshots, private messages, comments, conversations. Every cruel, vile thing he had ever said about people behind their backs. Some were about students he pretended to call friends. Others were about people he bullied outright. Every insult, every ugly thought, every two-faced remark, on display for the whole school to see. Some of the messages were cruel jokes. Others were worse, racist remarks, sexist comments, digs at teachers. Things no one could laugh off. And the timestamps made it worse. They weren't from years ago. They were recent. Bryce shoved his way through the crowd, his face pale. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked as his trembling hands tore the papers from his locker. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Maya didn't need to say a word. She leaned against the opposite locker, arms folded, just watching. Watching as Bryce's empire collapsed. Watching as the same classmates who used to laugh at his jokes now stared with disgust. Watching as his so-called friends slowly stepped back, unwilling to sync with him. His eyes found hers at last. No smirk. No arrogance. No mask. Just raw rage. "You did this," he hissed, shaking with fury. Maya tilted her head. "Did I?" His nostrils flared. "You think you're so smart? You think this makes you better than me?" Maya stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. "No, Bryce. I don't think this makes me better than you. I think this makes you exactly who you are. The only difference is now, everyone else sees it too." His fists clenched, his whole body vibrating. For a second, Maya thought he might actually swing at her. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because if he did, he'd only prove her right. Instead, he turned sharply, shoving through the crowd as whispers chased him down the hall. His kingdom had fallen, and there was no rebuilding it. That afternoon, Maya walked out of school to find Vin Diesel leaning casually against his black Charger. His expression was calm, but in his eyes, pride. She slid into the passenger seat, exhaling. Vin didn't turn the key yet. He just looked at her. "It's done, huh?" Maya nodded. "It's done." Vin studied her a moment longer, then smirked. "You didn't even have to throw a punch." Maya leaned her head back against the seat, smiling faintly. "Didn't need to." Vin chuckled and started the engine. The Charger roared to life as they pulled away. "So," he said, "what now?" Maya thought about everything, the weeks of tension, the games Bryce had played, the weight she'd carried. Then she smiled. "Now I finally get to enjoy high school." Vin laughed, shaking his head. "That's my girl." The road opened ahead, the late sun casting long streaks of gold as the car picked up speed. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt light. She had won, not by shouting louder, or hitting harder, or stooping to Bryce's level, but by being smarter. By being patient. By letting the truth speak for itself. And Bryce Carter? He was already fading into memory. A cautionary tale. Proof that power built on fear never lasts. And a reminder that sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones you should never underestimate.